What's up, everyone? What's happening? Okay, it's a big day today. Anybody there? Waiting to see. There we go. Okay, so this big day is my dad's 100th birthday. Now, my dad died in 2004, but today, 100 years ago, my dad was born. 100 years ago. It's really hard to fathom that on February 21st, 1919, my dad was born. Crazy. So, I'm going to give a discount code as I do on the live streams, but this time it's going to be MB. My dad's name was Mike Beato 100. MB 100. 20% off anything in my store. My dad would be totally psyched about this. He knew about the internet. He died in 2004. He loved the internet. He loved digital, he loved making CDs and sending me music all the time. And he would have loved YouTube. He died 2 years before YouTube. But man, I think about it all the time. He would have loved this. He'd be tuning in all the time if I was doing stuff like this. This would be right. Let me tell you a quick story. So when I was in college, this is kind of relate to what I'm going to teach today. When I was in college, every day of the summer, I'd practice. And I practiced about 10 hours. And I worked a job working the night shift at a convenience store too. So I'd work from like 12 to 6 a.m. But I would practice. I put a card table out on my front porch. We had a screened-in porch in our little house in upstate New York. It was right the second house in from Main Street on our small town. We had a town of 5,000 I'm from. And my dad worked for the railroad for pretty much his whole career, from 1936 to 1978. And I would go out there with a cassette recorder and staff paper, and I would practice. And my dad sat in a rocking chair. He retired when I was in 10th grade. I mean, my dad was old, like I am, with my kids. He was 2 generations older than me. It's the same thing. I would practice for hours and hours, and my dad would just sit there and listen, and he would just twirl his hair. That's it. He'd just sit, never say anything. He'd kind of hum along. And I would be transcribing solos. I'd be doing the most tedious stuff. I'd be practicing scales, arpeggios, learning solos, but he'd never say a word. He'd never say good. He'd never say bad. He just listened. And I remember that when I became a college professor one time, my parents came down when I was 25, 26. They came down to see me teach. And I remember telling my students, this is when I was teaching at Ithaca College, I told my students, I said, you got to be on your best behavior. My parents are going to be here. How many professors have their parents come by, right? And so my mom and dad, I taught a theory class, kind of like this. And I had a blackboard that I'd write on. We didn't have whiteboards yet. And my parents sat in the back of the room and didn't say anything. And the kids all politely asked questions, unlike they normally would. And then they came to all my classes, and then myself and Steve Brown, who was my teacher in my undergrad, and then who we taught together, we played a duo gig at the student union, and all the students came, and my folks came, and I remember it was like it was yesterday. It was a huge thing. It was a real accomplishment to have done that. But everything that I did those every summer of college is really when I learned to play the guitar well. I mean, I started when I was 14 or so, but I had routines of things that I would do, and that's what we're going to talk about, the guitar theory, the basics that you should know. And the basics that you should know are essentially my practice regimen that I would do every day as I was learning the guitar neck, okay? Because learning the guitar neck at the same time I was learning music theory. Now, I had a couple strategies of how I would learn things. Every day I would take a different key. Okay, now the guitar is easier than a lot of instruments because you can transpose. If I play G major and move it up one fret, you have A flat major, you have A major. So it makes transposing really easily. You learn one set of fingerings. But where the guitar is tricky is that every note is found an average of 2.8 places on a 22 fret guitar. So if I take the note C, right? If I take this C, I can play it there, there, there. So that one C, I have in 1, 2, 3, 4 spots, okay? This E, 1, 2, 3, and that's it. That's in 3 spots, okay? So you'd say, well, what does that matter? Well, that actually makes it difficult to read. That's why guitar is difficult to read on, okay? We're not going to talk about reading, though. When we talked about theory the other day, as in a general principle, we didn't. This is more of the practical side of it for guitar. So we're going to take the key of G because G is easy to visualize on the guitar as you guys are sitting there, because our root note here is right at the 3rd fret where there's the first dot on most guitars. Okay, so my thing that I would do instead of learning modes, it's kind of in place of modes, because modes will go, certain modes go together if they're a half step apart. Like the difference between Locrian and Ionian, okay, is a half step. So if I play F sharp Locrian, well, the G is right there, so I may as well finish it out. Well, I may as well finish out all the notes that are found in this 4th fret spacing, right? Okay, so this is my first G position. I would always say that there are really 5 positions of the major scale for guitar. The second position would be up here, starting on the 2nd note of the scale. So we're going to go up each note of the scale, but we're going to skip up to here because there's a half step there. So you're going to skip there, there, and then you're there. Okay, so my next scale fingering is here. Now all this is in my Beato book. Now my Beato book does not come bound like this. It's a PDF, but you can get it bound. It's 461 pages. That's on sale in my store. Okay, this has these fingerings in it. And I call it covering the neck. You need to cover the neck with all these things so you never get lost. All right? The next position here would be here. So it would be, people would say, oh, that would be, they'd say, oh, well, that's a Dorian position. Yeah, that's A Dorian because I started on A, but it's really, I finished on C here. Okay, so I'm covering all the notes at A Dorian, and it happens to need a position change right here. The next position goes up to B. Now B is going to cover this, the B note and the C note. So it'd be B Phrygian, C Lydian. And it goes up to D. So I'm taking all the notes in G major in this position. So I have 1 position, 2 positions, 3 positions. My 4th position's up here, which would be D Mixolydian. Oops. Okay, so that would be D Mixolydian, but I'm going all the way up to F sharp. So thank you, Raul, appreciate that. So I'm finding where are those. Okay, and there's my C there, and then I go to the next position would be on E. So I started on G, A, B, D, E. What's that sound like? It's a G major pentatonic, okay? So this is going to be out of your E Aeolian shape, and it's going to get you all the way up to G. And then we're back up here. So, I shouldn't say that this, if you think of it just starting on G here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you go up the pentatonic scale, do these 5 fingerings. I call these the 5 positions of the major scale. Okay. All right, so that will cover the neck. Once you learn how to play those, the next thing that you do is you practice. You practice playing them. What I would do is I would record. Since I only had a cassette player, I would set up a vamp. Well, I have a sustain pedal here that will hold a chord. Now I can play any chord out of G major. Let's say I play this chord. Okay, this is the C. I played a C6-9. That is a chord from the key of G major, but I'm going to play. Okay, so what I did there is, thank you, Yellow House, is I started to improvise using those notes because I'm going to be able to go between those positions once I know them cold. I'm going to be able to go from here and shift to here, okay? Then maybe shift to there. And then I can go. Okay, so I'm... I did a little secondary dominant in there. Okay. So... Okay, the next thing that I would do, I would take the same scale and I would practice interval combinations, okay? But I would only practice the basic ones. They get really complex fast. I would practice the scale in thirds in every position. So that would be 1, 3, 2, 5, 3, 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5. So you go into every other note. Then I go to the next position, do the same thing. That's how you get around. That's how you get to have your lines be interesting, is by, as you're improvising, you put in some of these, you know... So I'm doing some thirds in there, but I only do a couple. I only use little bits and pieces. And then I'm using some arpeggio fragments, which is what we're going to go to next. You don't have to learn thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths. That comes later. If you want, you know, when you start to get into those harder interval combinations, six. Then it will take different, these are not basics, okay? This starts to get into things like I was hybrid picking there. I'm doing 6. Okay, so that would be hybrid picking. Practice thirds first, okay? If you can do a major scale all over the neck, be able to move comfortably between positions, right? Sometimes I'm doing notes all on one string because I just know where those notes are. Now I went to F major there, okay? So the next thing I would do is work on my arpeggios. Now you have two different types of arpeggios to practice. Basic arpeggios, your major and minor triads, right? And then your basic seventh chords. Okay, so I would do, don't worry about diminished or augmented triads. They're too difficult to play right off the bat. Just learn major and minor triads, okay? So, I would start with G major and take that in one position. Then I move up to the next note. So I'm going to go up to the third, which is B, and I'm going to learn it in this position. And then I'm going to go up here and learn it there. So I've learned it off the root, the third, and the fifth. Now you'll notice I am doing some sweep picking here. But I'm not getting locked in to sweep picking. So there I did some sweep, I did down, up, down, 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 up, down. Okay? Don't get locked into sweep picking right off the bat, because then you get locked into playing the same fingering, so you end up playing the same types of licks all the time. You don't want to do that, okay? That's the downside of sweep picking. You should be able to combine alternate picking, hybrid picking, and sweep picking together. Most of the time when people do sweep picking, they will play the same types of patterns, things that just fall under the hands, okay? If I play, and it tends to sound really choppy. If you can pick every note, it'll sound much, much smoother. Each note has a fatness to it. Each note has its own attack. And it's a different type of attack than just going down. Economy picking is sweep picking, okay? Economy picking is the same thing. Okay. Then I would take all of your seventh chords, and I would just do them in one position. So, I'm sorry, let's do your minor triads. So I'm going to take G, and I'm going to do G minor next. So I'm going to stay here. So what I did, down, up, down, 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 up, okay? So there is, and then a way up. So I am doing some sweep picking, but you should also, I can also alternate pick that. You saw that? You should be able to do it exactly the same as if you're sweep picking it. You should be able to do both. Because once again, when you're sweep picking, you get locked into playing particular phrases. Okay? Okay, then you go to the next position of G minor. Now, once again, these are all in my book. So I go off the root, right? Then I go off the third. And you can go down, up, down, 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 up if you want. Or alternate. I mean, that part of it is a sweep. Or it can be, I would do both. I would practice both. And then the next position is going to be off this D here, okay? So you're going to go D, root. It's going to be the same fingering as when you did, as if you did this. The only difference is, you can also go, but that gives you a weird position change, so I don't like to have people do that. And you can bar it if you want. So you've got your position off here. You can also, so you're going to go down, up, down, 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 up, down, down. Okay, to do that. Okay. Thank you, Nigel, and whoever $10 guy is there. Let's see, here is this. Keith Gray, you should pick with your soul, not a blueprint. I don't know what that means, but okay. Next thing to do is to practice your 7th chord arpeggios in one position. And what you want to do is major 7, dominant 7th, minor 7 flat 5, and diminished 7. Simply those. You don't have to do augmented major 7th. You don't have to do minor major 7th. None of those. I talked about this a few weeks ago, but I will typically, if I have G major 7, I will typically start on the 7th so that I get all the notes that are in that position. And then I'll end on my G. Then I'll go to G7. I'll come back to it. Thank you, Frank. Thanks, Donald. Then I'll go to G minor 7. Then I go to G minor 7 flat 5. Then I'll go to G diminished 7. Whoops. That one's a little bit trickier because there's a bigger stretch there. If you're up here, it's easier. But down here, you've got that 5 fret stretch there. So you have to kind of open your hand up. Okay, so that's, each of those goes with a chord. And what you really want to do is you want to get that locked in your brain. You play the chord first. Then dominant 7. Minor 7. Minor 7 flat 5. Play the chord. And then diminished 7, okay? And that would complete your workout with your scales and arpeggios, okay? So major triad, minor triad off the root 3rd and 5th. The root 6, we have to do the root 5 also. Root 6 sets of 7th chord arpeggios. Major 7, dominant 7, minor 7 flat 5, diminished 7. And then you go up to your root 5, okay? So you need to know all of your arpeggios off the 6th string and off the 5th string. If you know that, you've covered the neck, okay? So I would go up here and I would take this G and I would do, and I play the chord. Then I do G7. Then play G minor 7. You go up to the root if you want. Then you do G minor 7 flat 5. Then you do G diminished 7th. Play the chord again. Get the sound in your ear, okay? So these are your basic elements for practice. You cover the neck in your major scale, okay? You practice your triads, or you take one interval out of your major scale each day. One day I'm going to take thirds. One day I'll take fifths. That's a lot harder to play. Other days I'll take 6, right? I did 6 in this position. Right? Okay, so there's all my 6th in that position, but I would not do that every day, or I'd take one new one every day. If you do that, okay, Over the course of a week, well, you do seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, and sevenths. Okay, you've covered all interval combinations. Okay. Now, you'll say, well, what about things like the melodic minor scale? Well, after you've mastered these in one, you take one parent scale, the major scale, and you go through and you learn all those notes. Then you go to the next parent scale. So there's really five parent scales: major, melodic minor. Okay, we don't count the natural minor because they're the same notes as the major. So major, melodic minor, harmonic major, and double harmonic major. Those are your five parent scale combinations. Then you have your symmetrical scales. Besides those, you have your augmented scale, your diminished scale, which would be half whole, which is called dominant diminished, or whole half, which is called tonic diminished. Okay, those are all things to know later on. But these real basics like this. And when you get to your melodic minor scales, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to take G melodic minor. So what I've done, I did all the available notes in this position. Now these start to get a little trickier because some of the fingerings get a little tricky. They get a little bit trickier as you go through. And some of them have some weird position changes in them, right? So if I go up to here, this would be if I'm in the key of G melodic minor, right? So I'm doing it in thirds. Okay, so you take a couple weeks at the major scale, then you start digging into the melodic minor scale, and then take a couple weeks and do that, then you dig into the harmonic minor scale. Okay, eventually you'll get into moving positions with these things, with the arpeggios. You know, with some of these symmetrical scales, like the diminished scale or diminished seventh arpeggio, you can play the same. You can play that same fingering. That same fingering. So that fingering will move because it is symmetrical. So I'm moving because I know that scale, I know it moves every 3 frets. The same thing happens with the whole tone scale. Okay, so that gets a little trickier. Some of these symmetrical scales, augmented scale. These scales sound really cool. I love that sound. It's beautiful, beautiful sound, the augmented scale. That's stuff for later on. So these are your basics here. Cover the neck in all your major scales, okay? Learn that. Learn your major and minor triads off each note, off the root, off the third, off the fifth, in 3 positions. Then learn your seventh chords off the low E string and the A string. Okay? Starting with by playing the chord and then play the arpeggio after it. So you get in your ear the sound of the chord. Eventually, as you start getting these under your fingers, you're going to want to do things like this. And you're going to want to change positions. I did. These are symmetrical fingerings, what I call. Okay, this is pianistic fingering. So you got the same shape. 1, 2, 1, or 1, 2, 1, 4. So that gets into, these are more complex ideas to practice. Okay, and this starts to connect the entire guitar with these arpeggios. If I'm doing this, and I go up to here, well, you say, well, what about this area of the guitar? Well, this area of the guitar is... You have to... that's where those symmetrical fingerings start to come in. That's what starts to enable you to connect all the positions once you get those down, okay? You don't have to work on, right off the bat. I wouldn't bother with things. You can do economy picking if you want, but within these triads, anytime that you have 2 downs in a row, okay, if I'm playing G major, I'm doing those downs. And I did all those ups, and I did a down there, okay? So try to put them in where they're naturally flowing there, but don't always get locked into the same fingerings, because when you do that, it starts to limit your playing to only playing ideas out of those particular positions. You know how many guys just, they'll play those same sweep picking arpeggios. They always sound the same. They play them the same way because that's the only way that they practice them. They can't really flow between them. Okay? So these things are hard to do too. And eventually, in each position, you'll take these triads, major and minor, and then you'll do them in thirds. Right? Then. Those are hard to do because you have a lot of I do finger replacements. That's hard. Right? And do the same thing for those minors. You got to be able to do all those kind of things because you're going to be using those things in your improvisations, and you want to be as fluid. You want to be as fluid as you can. Okay, so that, like I was just doing G add 9, I did G minor add 9, but no, I can't dry that tone up there. You want to hear the notes. Well, get a hearing aid, bro. You won't do dry. I like that. There we go. There we go. How can you practice all this in a chord progression? Um, Best way to practice, to start to practice these things, I like these sustain pedals there because I like to play a chord, and I like to. And we didn't have these. I would just vamp back then, you know. So, I mean, I'm just playing in G major there, okay? I was just playing different chords in the key, and I would record that, then I'd practice soloing over that, if that makes sense, right? Or you can just practice with hit this pedal here, and I played a chord, A minor 11 here, that's in the key of G major. So I did. I know where those notes are. Then I'll play a different chord. Maybe I'll play this chord. Right? Maybe I'll play this chord. Hold on. So I'm playing chords in the key of G right there. And I'm using, the only notes I'm using are G major right there, okay? But I use some different triads on that C. If I have that C major chord here, right, I can use... It's cool, you know. So I'm just playing a C major chord, but I'm playing C Lydian over it. That's all G major there. It's cool. This is great sound, beautiful sound. But because I know the neck, I can do that. Okay, Beato book, anything in my store 20% off today. It's my dad's 100th birthday. MB100. Mike Beato 100. That's my dad. I miss him every day. He was the best. I think I went into music because my dad was a tough guy to impress. He never would say anything. He never would say anything positive, but you knew that he was always proud of you. That's a trick to pull off right there. That's I'd be like, what do you think of that? Yeah, not too bad. That was about it. Yeah, so my dad would have been 100 years old today. It's his 100th birthday. So thank you everyone. DJ Green Arrow, the best. All of you Beato Club people, you guys know about the Beato Club. You can sign up for that if you want to support the channel even more. I have a new level on the Beato Club that we added yesterday for people. I know that the platinum level, which is the highest level, is always locked up because people get in there and they don't want to give up their position or anything. But we added a level above platinum, platinum plus. Go check it out in there. Hey, Peter, Frank, everybody. It's really, yeah. So anyways, this is a great day. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Take care.